Today is, actually it's evening tonight, is March 12th, 2015. And I just paused the last video clip that I was doing because my dog was making some noise at the house and for fun. But anyway, so these government families were, most of the people that were there were government families, excuse me, with kids. Kids, a lot of them that had kids my age. And yet there were a few other individuals there who I really don't know. I don't know if they had any kids of their own at all, or if they did, if they were older. And I didn't really see them as part of the specific plan to rape me. However, they were part of coaching and coordinating the programming of me that went into it. So there were other U.S. government employees and people connected to the government that were meeting together to do this to me. But they were not necessarily going to use their own kids to facilitate the rape of me that they planned for the future. And so there was this group of families that did have kids my age, and I guess what their plan was is that they were going to have all these kids. I mean, they really thought everything out. But I guess the plan was to have all their kids when they were older and grown up, older like I would have been as well, to all get together and then trigger me, which I can explain what the trigger was. Trigger me to meet with them, and then while I was meeting with them, from there, and they're planning to have drinks, and then from there, Robin was going to take me out and rape me. And they spent a lot of time on this one specific strategy of how to rape me. So these people really must have hated me a lot to go to that. Possibly there were one or two that were kind of forced to be there, I'm not sure, but to go to the trouble and extent that they did to plan this, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of coordination between all of them, and and it was a definite, clear plan to commit crime. So, where do I start explaining this part of this? Okay, so for example, I was living in Moses Lake, Washington. So that was where my regular house was. So for example, they'd drive me over to this Sherwood-Wilsonville area when I was a kid. From Coquille, Oregon, sometimes, and other times straight from my house in Moses Lake, Washington. And and one of my eyes is not blacker than the other one. It's just white. So for example, let's say I was in Coquille, Oregon, and then I would get driven over to the Sherwood area, where, for example, Shannon Adams' dad worked from his house sometimes, and also had an office in Portland, downtown Portland, and he worked as a psychologist. From what I recall, he was a psychologist and a psychiatrist, but he might be a psychiatrist as well. And he did know people. he knew people who had access to drugs and different kinds of things, but I think I knew of him as a psychologist and neurologist type of a person. So, so anyway, he practices programming of kids. At least the government used him to do that to me, and I'm very sure that if they did that to me, why would I be the only one? You know, I mean, there has to be other kids that he did this to, and especially in his role as a psychologist, he would have access to people who are going to him for for advice or having problems and that kind of thing, and talking to him, and he would be able to use his position to possibly do that kind of thing. But on the other hand, maybe I was just this big project person they shoved around to, from one place to the next, and they all tried out different things on. And maybe it didn't happen to other people that much, but I just would think that I'm possibly not the only person. So, for example, they take me to his house, and the girl that was my age was Shannon Adams. And I was later going to be positioned by the government to go to school with all of those same government employees' kids in Sherwood. So I was taken over to the Adams house, and he had me in a room. Had me in this room. And was just asking me a lot of questions. He did some kind of interrogation too. He didn't. I'm pretty sure he had a polygraph at his house, because I remember he did polygraph kinds of exams with me there, and he did interrogation kinds of exams, like do you want this? Say yes. And I had to say yes. Now, sometimes it was like a voluntary, my giving an answer according to what I really thought, and other times it wasn't. It was that I had to give the answer that he wanted. And so that's how the programming with the government works, is that they make you repeat these things over and over and over, and then they electrocute you to your brain with this electrocution box thing that I've described. And they feel that that helps to traumatize your brain into accepting and doing this repetitious kind of thing, like imprints it in the subconscious. It brainwashes you, basically. So that possibly it's just psychological, because you're so traumatized and getting tortured that you're afraid to have another response other than what they tell you to do, and forcing you to do it over and over. So after a while, you start to automatically come up with what they want you to say, even without thinking about it or trying to think about it, because I think probably your body's defense mechanisms of survival, when you're under that kind of pain and torture, is to do what they are telling you that you have to do or say, so that your body's not going to have to go through that same kind of severe pain. So anyway, he would, sometimes he would interrogate me, like with a polygraph, and then other times, and I could give whatever answer I felt was suited to his question. And then other times, he was telling me, he would ask questions, and he would say yes, and then I'd have to say yes. And then no matter what his question was, I had to say yes. And he would do it in a specific way. Is it okay if we blah, 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 blah? And I have to say yes. Is it okay if, can I blah, blah, blah? Yes. They were saying all kinds of things, like, actually he was specifically saying things like, can I touch you? And I had to say yes. And they weren't actually always touching me when I was having to go through this repetition of saying yes. but sometimes they were. And he was taking part of that along with some other individuals that they had there, that they were having like touch me and do different things to me, while I was having to say yes repeatedly to his questions of could they do this, could they do that. I didn't want them to be touching me at all. I didn't want them to do anything. But I was getting tortured if I didn't. And so that's one example of something that he did at that house there. And like, I'd get dropped off there. It's like a government thing. Like, my parents were forced to drop me off. I could tell sometimes they didn't want to drop me off there. And I was getting dropped off there and left there. And then I was like there for weeks at a time, like at least a week at a time. And where I slept, I'm not quite sure. I think I slept on a couch or something, or on the floor, because half the time they would drill me all day with that kind of stuff. And then until basically I passed out. I was just so tired. I don't remember eating or getting anything to eat. I know that they used food and sleep deprivation to drill in their programming techniques. And I don't remember his kids around that much either. He pretty much did this. I did see them a couple times going in, but he did a lot of this. He had some older kids there too, but he did most of it on his own in his private room in his house. And I was also taken to his offices downtown once, at least once I remember. I was driven downtown. And I believe there that some of the other FBI showed up. But most of what he did was at his own residence. And actually, you know, there were a few times that I was at his office and that other people were going there, and there's like a couch, you know, like the psychiatrist type of a couch and that kind of thing. So, anyway, it was really bad. So that's one of the things that they had me do, is they were forcing me to say yes repeatedly to their questions of, could they touch me, could they kiss me, could they fondle me. I didn't even know some of the words that they were using. All I knew is that they were making me say yes to everything. And then the other thing that they did was they started programming me. Well, that was something that they did at the Adams house and offices. And he also had me getting drunk. I was also getting tortured really bad, and then being told, well, we were going through this whole thing of like going through certain motions of how they could entice me to have a drink. Like using trigger for that too, but I don't remember specifically what the trigger was. But there was a trigger to like my being forced to accept a drink when I didn't drink. You know, I was a kid when they did this, but they were planning, I guess, for my future when I might be at a drinking age, and if I didn't want to drink, they were going to use this specific trigger to encourage me to start drinking and to accept drinks that they gave me. And so what he was doing in his house is getting me drunk, and then I was having to go through this whole series of can I touch you? Yes. And I had to say yes to all these things again. So they were kind of playing out this whole scenario, like step by step, of how they were going to lead up to they were going to make it look like I was consenting to being touched or to having sexual relations in some form, and yet I was actually being raped. And they had an entire plan that was leading up to their grand finale of how they were going to do that. So there were several other things that were involved in this, and I've just explained the first part.